There we go. Hey everybody, I think that I just admitted everybody. Gary will be sad and disappointed that I probably screwed this up somehow, but welcome to webinar 1 bajillion and 1,
Getting
which is,
closer to 250.
yeah,
So
which is officially one more than webinar 1 bajillion. Now, in all seriousness, you were correct, Jack, that it is close to 250 because I'm going to have to. We're doing the 250th anniversary webinar again this year live. And when I retired the Dunk Kings shirt, Jack, I gave it to my son to wear at a fraternity party. So I am kind of sad that I'm just wondering, in what state will I be getting the Dunk Kings shirt back?
have you asked for it back?
I'm going. So basically, this is where he's going to poop his pants in nervous panic. Right? And
Send me the link for a replacement too.
yeah,
As
what actually happened? And Jack has a special guest for this. It's like, hey, you guys are just not like even talking about anything real here. What did I sign up for?
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And so before we get started, I'd like to introduce everyone to Jade Davis, one of my extraordinary partners. She is in the and she'll explain more, but the data, electronic commerce kind of areas. And so as we've been talking about using AI and chat GPT and about, and I keep throwing in Skynet, and older people will understand what I'm referring to. I said that yesterday to a younger person and they're like, what? I said the machine in Terminator that takes over the world in 6 or 7 movies kind of thing. So, but yeah, so the discussion today, as we talk about things that business owners should be aware of, is going to have definitely an electronic AI tint to it. And I've been wanting to do this for a while now, and so I'm down in Tampa for some other reasons, and Jade was here, and she was actually just up in our Toledo office doing a webinar internally for all of us to learn more about what their awesome team practice group does and what we have to offer to everyone as we come into kind of this next era of commerce and business ownership and just technology and everything else. So if you want, do you have a rant that you would like to give about anything before uh, Jade introduces herself and kind of we continue moving forward?
Yeah, perfect. I do a little bit. Thank you for the chat, Joseph, about the Lake Norman Chamber having an AI summit next week. There's details in the chat for anybody that would like to take a look at that. There are going to be drink tickets at that too, Joseph. That's usually an appealing way to get people. Just kidding with that, by the way. Oh yes, there will be drink tickets. Excellent, thank you. So the only as usual, if you guys have any questions, hit us up in the Q&A. Otherwise, if you want to haze anybody on the webinar, haze me, Jack or Jay, do that in the chat. But the only thing that I had to cover off on is the big beautiful House bill, Jack. He's smiling. You can't see him because he hasn't said anything. That's just funny. Now he's giggling. Hopefully you get to see that in a second.
I
But
can't wait to hear how this is going to come out. Go ahead.
Gary's like, delete. Put the mute button on him. Now it's more around, there's been a lot of, ballyhoo and talk about, and I've been on, I think if we were to survey the BGW client base, you know, and this is, probably true of a lot of business owners, the general leaning leans right. So, that what I've heard from a lot of our clients around, well, there's certainly an easier way to collect taxes than an income tax, which is kind of the allusion towards a national sales tax or reliance upon tariffs, as there's been talk around. And my only comment on that relative to the big, beautiful House bill that just passed is that in this big, beautiful House bill that just passed, which by the way, passed with one vote or by one vote. Uh, and up until 2 hours before the vote, looked like it was not going to pass. um, had some really massive changes in it to the tax code. And I say that quite sarcastically because it effectively had no changes that were unanticipated to the tax code. So in a House that Republicans control, that passed by the slimmest of majorities, they basically passed an effectively no change revenue bill. And by no change, it means, hey, we're going to extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So there was nothing revolutionary in here. There was no abolish the IRS. There was no, hey, let's radically reduce the income tax rates um, to otherwise put in a reliant, change the revenue system in the US to be a tariff system. And, I kind of keep track, Jack, of like, where people lean in the Senate. And, I don't know, last time I checked, Josh Hawley's a pretty conservative dude. Like he's not known out there for being, progressively liberal. And he said, yeah, I don't know. I don't see how we're gonna get this baby through. Steve Bannon, he's another liberal, right up there with Rachel Maddow, he's saying, yeah, I don't know how this is going to go anywhere. So in its current format, which also called for some pretty substantial spending cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. So my point in saying all that is that I'm going to stand by it. It's like, hey, it's fun to have commentary, on, hey, I wonder what's going to happen. We're really going to do this. But if you just look at the reality of like, they could barely get something to pass that was basically something that everybody was for the most part in terms of, I mean, even the Democrats in the Harris campaign were generally for extending some version of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So they barely got it over the goal line in a format that was in a limited change format. So that's just a long way of saying, keep calm and don't panic. I don't see anything. I don't see the entire global government revenue regime changing tomorrow. You know, maybe in 30 days, but not tomorrow. I don't think so. That tirade complete. I did well. Gary would be proud, I think.
He will be proud when he watches the videotape. So yes. All right. So in other news, and kind of on the opposite end of remaining calm, we're getting to a point where in last week and prior weeks, the quick history is on the CTA, the Corporate Transparency Act, and the beneficial owner reporting, ownership information reporting is that before Christmas, it was on, it was off. Then it was on, then it was off. And then it was on and off at the same time, which is you had two different courts saying, hold, yes, you have to proceed, and the other one saying hold. And now both of those courts have said, the hold is off, you do have to comply. What they've done is they've given all of us an extended deadline into March to be able to file. So hopefully, if you haven't filed, you've at least done what we've suggested, which is to get your information together, go ahead and scan that driver's license or passport, get those things that are required. Now, you can wait a little while longer and see if something's going to happen, but I don't have confidence that that is going to happen before the deadline. And so, but it's really up to all of you as to when you want to file or not file. And again, I say that, okay, that is the legal answer. The practical answer is if you don't file, are they really going to come after you? So it's no harm, no foul. As I've said before, they have this information already in various places. Obviously, a federally issued passport is in the federal database. A state issued driver's license is in a state database. So law enforcement has access to this stuff, and it's just a matter of putting it all in one place. So we're kind of doing the government's work for them, I think. That's a Jack opinion. So Okay, so before Jake gets into it, I want to give away a few coffee cards. And so there was a article, or actually a whole section in one of the Wall Street Journals last week that had the history of workplace tech since 1889. And so the first person who can tell me when the new product of an elevator or a lift was introduced in the United States, I will give away a gift card. And you have 10 seconds. All right. And I'm going to tee up the next one. So whoever, 19, okay. Close, Joe, but not quite. Little, it wasn't that far back, but it was close. I may give you a card anyway since you jumped in and guessed, but you're within a decade. So according to this article, it's January of 1931.
Oh, look.
You got it. Okay. All right. So Will, I owe you as well. So Will and Joe. All right. How about this new device called the electric hunt and peck? So typewriter, essentially, electric typewriter. When was that? With plus or minus a few years.
Joe's
Anyone? 18, 19. Okay. Wow. Will, you're on it. All right. So it was June of 1950. All right. How about a similar device called this? And the description is picture senders, vision, coin and slot telegrams, weather maps by radio, but it is essentially the facsimile introduced in the United States, available for public consumption or for public use. It was actually earlier than both of those. The fax machine was, man, Will, are you cheating? Actually, it's a couple decades earlier than that.
Nope.
All right, so 42. Wow. Okay, man. June of 1945. All right, and then one to show just how fast time passes, which is more recent. This new wireless device that delivers your email right into your hands. So the first portable device, and I'm looking to see if it actually was a BlackBerry. Yeah, it's RIM. Okay, that's the name of a Prince song, Joe, but I like where you're going with that. And in fact, you're 1 year off. So it is February of 2000. So Joe and Will, I will send you gift cards unless you let me know separately that you'd rather have an adult beverage the next time we see each other. So, all right, on to the cool stuff. So I want to introduce my partner, Jade Davis. She has been with us for a while and has an expertise, and well, I'll let you describe it because I probably will butcher it.
No problem.
But yeah, it's and just thrilled to have her and her team and building on that team just because of where we're going with technologies just generally and being able to offer those services too. And there's a lot of, and the reason why I'm really thrilled to have her here is because there is so much that we don't know, and and this isn't meant to be a scare tactic or to say, oh my gosh, I need to do something immediately. I mean, chances are you may already have an issue within your system and not know it, but so that's my small little scare tactic. But otherwise, this is more for information as to where things are going in certain areas of electronic commerce and AI and data. It was recently brought to my attention that many of our clients are probably not capitalizing on the aggregation of data that they have. And then more importantly, you hire somebody to do whatever with your data, whether it's collect customer information, those kind of things. And then, you presume, well, it's your data. Well, is it? What does the contract say? Does it say anything about who owns that data? Does it say anything about what happens when you basically redact electronically the personal information and leave the general information so it shows trends or things like that? Who owns that? And, is your data being used by the people who are providing you with the pathways, and are they monetizing it and using your data, and there's nothing you can do about it. So those are really the things that we, tend to talk about. But if you wouldn't mind
Yeah.
giving a high level intro of yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very happy to be here and to join you all. I am a data privacy, cybersecurity, and advanced technologies lawyer. In this instance, we're talking about artificial intelligence, but I've worked with quantum computing and more of the like. I started in the privacy area in 2012, so a little over 10 years ago, but primarily in the healthcare venue, just helping hospital corporations, private docs get onto electronic medical records. And then there was just this proliferation of cyber attacks into those systems, which we still see today. And it just over the years grew and grew and grew. And now it's really industry agnostic. Everyone is using technology. As we know, we're on technology now. And we just need to get in front of the problems and embrace technology. I love the article that Jack brought up. When we first got email, there were a lot of people that were staunch opponents of email decades ago, basically saying they weren't going to use it. But I can't imagine not having email doing business today. And so really that's what artificial intelligence is either you use it, you innovate with it, or you get left behind. Companies are sticking AI behind a lot of their products just to help market them. But we've been utilizing advanced technologies, artificial intelligence for many years just to figure out the trends in human behavior, what you buy, what you like. And companies have been purchasing it for decades. So that goes to your data monetization piece. So the first thing I can talk about, I saw, so in the chat, I saw we have a note taker, so an AI note taker. And many people love these. I am definitely a fan if it's a closed note taker. But if you've, signed up for a service where you are using their product, you're licensing it essentially, all of that information may not be protected. So you want to make sure, even in your companies, that you have very clear policies on when people can use note takers, when they can't use them, because you may have closed door meetings where you're talking about proprietary or trade secrets within your company. You may have legal issues you're discussing in meetings, and if you have them on note takers, they're fair game for anyone to get. If you have a case, they're discoverable. That's what we call it when we have a litigation. So that's one thing that popped up even in the meeting that I saw. As far as looking at your contracts with your providers, I can guarantee you that they all pretty much say data is de-identified, which means you're taking personal information from it, or anything that you've set out in your agreement that's confidential. So that would be proprietary trade secrets. And they can then aggregate that data and they can use it however they like, which they will typically sell to data brokerages who then also sell that information to, Ann Taylor, Nike, whomever, just to figure out how they can strengthen their own algorithms and the models that they have.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So maybe go into kind of common uses of AI, and is so, and I think many of you have heard the horror stories, potentially possibly in the legal industry, where a young lawyer uses AI and then the case doesn't exist, or there's a bad citation or something along those lines. But and I am personally a later adopter of technology. I'd rather other people kind of work through the bugs and stuff, but I also know that, okay, I may be missing out on certain things. And as you said before, if you're not using AI, then you not only miss the bus, you're like miles away from even catching up to that, unless you have some purposeful effort in what you're doing. But I also appreciate things that I hear from clients as they say, well, we don't want to expose ourselves to that. I mean, we're being entrusted with information, and if something happens to that, it'll destroy our business, because people won't trust us with that anymore, and they'll go elsewhere where they feel assured that. So what would be some good uses of AI and then some kind of pitfalls as you're using AI. And then related to that, because now, for example, if you were to go and use Word, you see that it's filling in the rest of your sentence for you. So that's the AI, right?
That's right.
Doing that. And it's also learning from what you say and how you say it and what you typically say. So it may, for me, fill in the rest of a sentence with something more legal than it might for someone who does sales or does marketing. So it's learning and it's right there, and it may be doing that and unbeknownst to you because you bought the license to the software and it gets updated constantly because
Yep.
it's now all cloud-based. It's not on your computer. So anyway, I hit you with a lot of stuff. So
No,
go
that's
with it how
great.
you
That's
wish.
great. So let's talk about really what you ended on. So he's talking about generative AI, where you are basically putting inputs, that's what we call it, and based on the modeling and the other inputs that the machine has, it will give you outputs. And so with the example you talked about with lawyers putting fake cases in their work, which is terrible, that's what we call a hallucination, an AI hallucination, because it does hallucinate and makes mistakes. And if you're going to use it, no matter what you're using it for, you want to make sure there's human touch. We have several AI laws in the US on the books. They started in the insurance area years ago because insurers, and to this day, they still do, they make claim decisions, whether it's denials or they approve you based on what they've put into their models and what their algorithms state will allow you to approve a claim. They're supposed to have clinical human interaction and review. So, okay, the database has gathered everything, it's organized it for that individual, and then they're supposed to go and look through it, but they don't. They make determinations utilizing AI, which is against the law to only do it if it can affect someone, a person, then they should not do it without having the human interaction. I can speak generally on just like, pitfalls and how to use it, but we can get very, very specific based on your industry, and you guys can plug those into the chat as we go. But I love utilizing AI just for the mundane, rudimentary correspondences that you may have that take time. If you need to get started in whatever field you're in, you may have a client in the energy field and you want to provide insurance products to them, but you want to do some due diligence on this company and learn more about them, it may be more worthwhile for you to plug it into a generative AI product like ChatGPT versus doing independent searches. Now, in Google, they already have their AI tool, and you can notice that at the top now, if you do any search, you'll be able to see what it's put out, what your outputs are, and they'll have links within that as well. So they're also embedding that into their technology. Same thing with Amazon. If I go, I get recommendations on Amazon based upon what I search and what my history is from my purchases. If I'm looking for a shirt, it'll say, well, typically, you work with medium because they look at what you return and you'll put, oh, it's too small. They're gathering all of that information to help inform what other recommendations they can provide you. Pitfalls, we can go there quickly. Not having human interaction, right? So being a lawyer, drafting something or not drafting it at all, putting an input saying, hey, AI machine, I have this case, I'm arguing these points, draft me a response or a motion, and not double checking it. Just that is terrible. So not only is it terrible from a lawyering standpoint, but from anyone, if you just have you're a marketing professional and you're trying to put together information for a prospective client or a client and not reviewing what your output is, number one, you're doing yourself a disservice because you want to review what you get, but you also want to train what you've purchased. So if you then will say, okay, this is a great response, except for X, Y, and Z is incorrect, replace it. You're then also training that model that you've purchased or you have licensed to use. Another pitfall would be not having policies in your company that tell your employees how they can use it. I'm a staunch believer in using technologies, but making sure people have the rail guard so that they can use it responsibly, but also make sure that you're protecting the business, right? So you may tell your folks, okay, you can use Anthropic as another tool, Claude. You can use Claude if you want to draft grant proposals. This is a true story, but it won't say names. Anthropic is really good. They have a tool named Claude, similar to ChatGPT, but it's better for long lengths of outputs. And for grant proposals or grant requests and writing, it can be very extensive. And so this company, basically, we went through a particular tool, we licensed it from Claude, and we customized it. So we brought it in-house, so it's closed source. And then they also had the regular standalone Claude that wasn't closed, but they got it as an enterprise option earlier on. Okay. So the employee, whether they were trained correctly or not, they put sensitive information into the open source model and not the closed model. The closed model was for all the proprietary information that we have in our closed source that we paid for. Open source is, cull from all the other inputs and outputs you've provided other users and give me something, bigger, a bigger perspective. And then you can take that output that you get and put it on your own system and add the personal information or whatever you need to on there. They didn't do that. They put all that information on there. There was a policy that stated what you were supposed to use and not. And a donor found out, institutional donor found out that this information was put into the system in some roundabout way. And they took their business. So they didn't sue. They could have sued under their donor agreement, but they took the business, which is, very much more valuable than someone suing you and you have 2 to 3 years in litigation. And so the moral of that story is, if you don't have an AI use policy in your company, have one, because if it's much bigger than that circumstance, your company would be liable for your employees' actions. If you have a contracted employee, they're not at will or even at will, you want to be able to reprimand or respond to an employee's behavior or actions if they're not following policy. So that particular individual really should no longer have any access to those kinds of tools until they have really proven that they understand how to use them and not. In this circumstance, we just shut off the open source side of it, and they only use the closed source. But it happens all the time. I helped a particular educational business. They would get a lot of, it was like a daycare, but a preschool, and they are national. And they do a lot of lessons, and they have to create these lessons for the kids. They have a huge curriculum, and they really wanted to do more work on their curriculum, which was great. It's like, great, how can we really pull from other resources to enrich our curriculum for the kids? Instead of inputting generalization, so like, we have 3 to 5 year olds in this particular group, and we want them to have English language arts curriculum. We want to touch on, however many subjects within that particular curriculum. And we want it to be engaging. I mean, however you set the prompts up, you can do it general enough so that you can get a pretty good output that you can work with. They just uploaded an Excel sheet of all the kids' names, their performances so far, where they're having problems within the school, which would be great information if they took out the names and the date of birth, but it's so much more easier. Let's just, upload this. And so that was a huge, huge problem, because not only do you have personal information being exposed, these are of minors. So we do have federal laws there. So earlier we were talking about, how our government is so difficult to get anything passed, but they do have a law. It's called FERPA, and it basically states that you have to ensure that you keep, children's information private, especially in the educational realm. And then we have another federal rule, COPPA, that's a law, and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they pretty much strong arm and guard that law, which requires that you get parental consent before you disclose children's information. So the moral of those stories is you can use information. I empower you to use these tools, but make sure that you're using generalized information. You're double checking what your folks are doing. Some companies are saying we don't want any AI, and you can't use it, and they have a policy that says you cannot use AI. I guarantee you, if you get an audit, someone in your company is using it.
Yeah, and I want to get into also the latest and greatest bad things that bad people are doing to get information, so more of the data breach. But I want to reiterate something that you said in a little different way, but more of the asset protection and the information protection, literally. So via hardware and software. So for example, in our system, and the attorneys have higher level of permission, but staff and others, they try to go to certain places and it will say, nope. Sometimes it'll prompt us, it'll pause and it'll say, are you sure you want to go? And it will allow us to go. There have been some times where I've had to call IT and say, hey, it's legit, check it out and give me permission, please, very soon to get to this place, right? And so, but you can have a policy, but it needs to be enforced, but it also needs to be babysat, electronically, meaning that you should have these guardrails that will say, okay, well, when you try to do this or try to do that, and there's going to be misses. I mean, the software is not perfect, but there should be, and recall that this is property of your business. So, it is okay to, and especially with the machines that go out of your office. I will tell you that our machines are very protected. Our laptops, our phones, we basically have to turn over our phones if we want to use a personal phone for work. And Big Brother can watch anytime they want to. And they're not supposed to. That wouldn't be very ethical to just monitor for just monitor's sake. But everything is being recorded and everything. So if there's a problem or if there is a breach, which we can talk about, they'll know where it came from, how it got into our system, infiltrated our system and worked its way through. So interesting stories about that. But look into what, and don't assume that whatever came with the computer or came with the software that's on your computer is doing that. Don't assume that Norton is the end all be all of everything. I don't know anything about Norton, but I mean, I know it's on my personal computer, and I do put my head in the sand, and I'm like, okay, hopeful that between the computer and this little box that I bought when my kids were younger, that supposedly is supposed to protect against all evil things coming into my household, which they obviously can get around once they go off of our system and get onto the Verizon signal. So they all figure that stuff out. So your employees will figure out how to get around it as well. So look into that. Oh yeah, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you differentiate a little bit between what I heard kind of a good breakdown of AI that was helpful to me in the sense of like, you hear people say, hey, I'm in marketing, and it's like, well, what do you do? Well, I sell logo pins. you know, hey, I'm in marketing. Well, what do you do? Well, I created the Chick-fil-A cow campaign. There's a difference between those two things, right? So what I heard in terms of a differentiation was like AI and Waymo, like the car's driving itself, there ain't no driver in it, versus AI, meaning I asked ChatGPT to cite a legal opinion, like you guys used, at the very beginning, or I used, some sort of AI enabled note taker. Where I guess where do you sort of see the biggest level of adoptions in business between those two differentiations, and where do you see sort of the biggest liability, that we may have in terms of screwing something up?
Yeah, so a lot of companies now are pretty much beta testing or using what we call AI agents. That started really with chatbots many years ago. So we've had chatbots for a very long time. Some of the chatbots were actually not AI focused. They were really a bunch of folks in India or Bangladesh, getting these messages whatever time of the day and responding based upon prompts that the company provided them. Well, now we have AI agents, and it sort of dovetails into the question we got in the chat, where it talks about communication being facilitated by AI. Companies are building their models to utilize AI agents to do the simplest tasks without having to worry about a human doing it for you. They're packaging these and selling them so folks like you and I can get an AI assistant. So, for example, I just helped a company purchase one of these products that they're still training the models, but they're selling it to individuals like real estate agents who have a very busy business. They're independent contractors. They have all their clients they're managing. They need something scheduled. They don't have the infrastructure or the funds to have an assistant and a team of folks underneath the agents. And so they are purchasing AI agent based products to be like their Siri, but it's Siri, powered to the fourth power, not one. The liability is, are you training those AI agents with your inputs correctly so that you don't break the law? So we have laws in the U.S. and abroad, but we'll focus on the U.S. that basically state you can use AI, but individuals can opt out. And so you have to make sure that you have processes to ensure that over this, group of 10,000 folks, if four communicate to you through whatever tools you have or via email or whatever you've told them that they don't want to be included, you do that and you can prove that you've done it. And then also you're not training your models with bias, because when you don't make sure that you've removed as much bias as possible, which is very hard being humans building these models, what you do is you create algorithmic bias. And so now you have this model incorporating biased outputs or inputs to create biased outputs. That right now, practically, is at the very beginning stages. There have been cases on algorithmic bias, but nothing's come out of them. They've settled because it's just too messy. The only ones that we've seen substantial progress with, where you've seen huge fines to American companies, goes back to insurance or hiring. So our other laws are on discriminatory hiring or housing. So housing providers that utilize AI to review tenant applications. And the things you can do, it's incredible. You can get a subset of folks that apply. You can look at whatever addresses they put on their applications. The systems will then go look at those zip codes and make opinions and recommendations based on the viability of that tenant, making their rent. Right? So, and that's called discrimination, because you're using this set of factors that when, it may be a nicer part of town where you're saying, oh, yes, let's approve those people, but we won't approve someone that has a zip code in an area of the town that really isn't that nice. That's where you can get in trouble. That's where I would say we should be concerned to make sure that whatever we are building, you're double checking and auditing with humans and having a fair spread of folks to make sure that you don't break the laws that we have now. Because we have many more on the books, about 12 right now in other states, and they're all about prohibiting discrimination, bias, but the biggest areas are in hiring, providing housing, and insurance claims.
And Papa Joe, to answer that, I don't think you were on maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, where I said I had made a placed a phone call for HVAC repair, and the person, the AI, I knew it was a AI, said, okay, do you want to be in the queue and we'll call you back? I got the call back, and of course I assumed it was going to be a person, and started communicating with this person, but it was intuitive in a sense that it was, if I interrupted it, it would stop and it'd be rapid. It would say, okay, and inflections of normal speech of saying and it was very, and then so at some point I felt
Figure it out.
swindled, right? And that's all right, fine. And then at the end it was, thank you for the information. We're sorry you're having this issue. A human will get back to you.
Oh, wow.
It's like, wow, they were very explicit at the end, like, okay, a human being will get back to you, and did. And I just thought that, okay, that was very forward thinking to have that. I don't know how much that technology costs, but it was.
It's amazing. I've helped people train those models. What we realize is that the American people, because it depends on the region of where you live, we really trust a Midwestern accent.
Mm,
So they will all pretty much have a Midwestern accent, unless you're in and I'll say this the best way, a regional specific area where people don't like outsiders. So I would say, for example, and I have lots of friends in the state. I just came from the state from speaking to people in the construction financial industry. Texas is really Texas.
mm.
They don't really like doing business outside of Texas. So you're going to get a lot of AI agents or voices in that sense for Texas specific companies that have more of a like an El Paso twang or a little bit more twang because it makes people just subconsciously sort of put their hair down.
Yeah,
It's like,
comfortable.
oh, okay, I'm comfortable. Like, and so even if they realize, oh, I'm actually talking to an AI agent, they're actually more willing to give additional information versus me when I contacted my insurance company this morning. I was just frustrated because I couldn't get outside the prompts. Like, can you get an AI agent to help me get, past
Hitting
this?
the
Like,
zero and
it was like,
what do you
I want to send you to a human, but I need more information,
want?
Oh, we have another Adam.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm in our Myrtle Beach office and I drove here and one of my favorite podcasts is Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. Um, so he's a Jack Smile and he's like, yeah, he's a famous contrarian. So he was doing this takedown on the Varsity Blues legal case, which was great. That was the college admission scandal thing. But the question that I have is like, out of all of this as a business owner, if I don't want to be the subject of a Malcolm Gladwell book, sort of what decisions should I be okay with versus, sorry, AI, that's above your pay grade because I don't want to be the subject of a Malcolm Gladwell book.
It's really depending on your company and
Mhm.
what you feel that your employees, for example, are competent enough to do and to supervise. So when you think about as a business owner, you're supervising your employees or you have employed managers to supervise and ensure that if there's a question or we need more eyes on it, employees feel comfortable to collaborate, but then also to move it up the chain pole to say, hey, Adam, we need your help here. What do you think about this? When you're first infusing these advanced technologies in your business, I'd say in the beginning, you want eyes on everything. But because it takes training and then over time, you just want to make sure you're reviewing it. So, for example, if I decided tomorrow I really like to do franchise agreements and this is just my jam, and I'm like, this is what I was born to do. Like, I'm no longer cybersecurity and data privacy. I call Jack. I'm like, oh my God, Jack, I just want to work with you. Jack's not going to say, okay, this client needs this and not look at it, right? He's going to go through it line by line to verify, even if he even trusts me to start doing it, that I know what I'm doing. And then over time, maybe, 5 to 7 years in, he may feel comfortable letting me fly, and helping a client. But that's the same approach we have to have with these systems because at the end of the day, business is trust. That's how we get it. And if our clients can't entrust that we are reviewing documentation, we're verifying that we've done what we're supposed to do, what they're paying us to do, they'll take their business elsewhere, right? And so it really depends on what you're willing to invest in these systems. It's just like an employee. The only benefit is over time they'll get better, but you can't just let it fly, on its own.
So a couple of clarifications. First of all, you're more than welcome to join the franchise team whenever you wish. It will not take 5 to 7 years. Need all the help I can get. And that, as you can see, I am not the only one who says it depends. She said it twice. It's a little running joke that we have that it's okay. A lot of times the first is like, well, it depends, which is true. I mean, in a lot of cases. So let's
We
see.
did get a good question about
Yes.
cybersecurity insurance. And so you definitely, when you are doing a cybersecurity policy and even some general business policies or E&O writers, they will have questions asking about your technology, the systems you use, your security measures. We call it security and technical measures. They are impossible to answer on your own if you're not your own, information technologist. Okay. So I would highly recommend you get whoever does your IT for your company involved in that process. And in addition to an attorney, if you or a broker to make sure that you feel comfortable about your responses. But you can get those applications ahead of time, look at what they would be requesting, and then you can work with companies or vendors or the current vendor you have to make sure you have the security you need before you apply, because you want to get good rates. And let's just say that you can't even remember what you put on your application. The insurance company remembers. So when I get involved with cybersecurity attacks, our breaches, and a client has insurance, we're always super happy about that. We're trying to make sure we connect them with brokers every day. But the next step is you have to attest that you have what you put in your application. And if you don't really double check that, everyone gets a reservation of rights letter when they file a claim. So the insurance company says, we're happy to cover this for you. We're just going to reserve our rights. Well, they're going to do a forensic investigation. I headquarter those every day. And I'm moving between vendors to make sure we get who we need, whether it's a forensic accountant, whether it's, cybersecurity professionals, you name it. Well, if the insurance company finds out that you said you had multi-factor authentication and you didn't, they're not going to cover you. They're going to say, oh, okay, well, we're so happy that we can support you during this endeavor. I know we made you use all these folks on our panel, but this is your responsibility. So that's in addition to whatever you thought you only had to cover, which would be your deductible. You would actually have to cover it.
And I'll add so that's kind of an operations perspective. Add the M&A kind of exit strategy part of it, and that so and years ago was the advent of, if you were to take a due diligence list and get to the end of it, you wouldn't have questions about data security and have you had any breaches and what do you do necessarily. Now that is there, but what I'm seeing added on now is the insurance aspect of it. Do you have insurance? Have you had any claims? And what that does is that translates to additional value in M&A transaction in the form of a purchase price, or conversely, a deduct.
Yeah.
Of the purchase price, or a higher holdback that they're going to hold your money for a period of time. They're going to kick the tires once they own the company and make sure that there isn't anything bad they find that happened in the past, or anything that might happen in the future, whether it is 12 months, 18 months, whatever the holdback period is. And so, you're basically leaving value on the table if you don't go through some of these protective aspects. Now, again, the insurance isn't for everybody, but I mean, it's something, and eventually, even if it's expensive now, it probably will come down, because maybe, and this is kind of putting two things together, it's a Jack theory that maybe because of the use of AI and being able to go and do audits, that maybe it's less expensive because the insurance companies feel more comfortable about insuring a particular company. So again, Jack
That's
theory.
a good point. Yeah. And you know what? Not all IT providers are cybersecurity specialists. Very, very true. And so one thing you want to make sure that you're double checking is, do you do penetration testing? Do you audit your systems? I have had a lot of work in M&A transactions, people that are selling or buying companies, because these underwriters and insurers are asking the questions. And sometimes companies are doing everything they're supposed to do. They don't have it wrapped up in a bow. It's not in a pretty policy where they can turn it over. And so I work to help extract that information and make sure that we can notify whomever is selling the company so that we don't have a deduction of what they're offering, or we don't have a red flag for security when we actually are doing what we need to do. And on top of that, we can help do that ahead of time. So if we see, a client says, oh, we're really looking to sell, we'd like to sell our company next year. We'd like to really start that process. Okay, well, let's figure out doing an audit now to see what you're doing or not. What is your IT company providing you? Let's have a cybersecurity specialist look at and do a penetration test. They will find all of these areas, and I call them of opportunity to strengthen. So by the time now you're ready to sell, you've really positioned yourself better. You have your policies together, and you know how to respond to inquiries in that area.
And let's see, I think we're good. All right, so in the few minutes that we have left, maybe we could talk about kind of like the bad things, the new creative bad things that people are doing to get information. So, and we've talked about, okay, do not open anything unless you actually see what the underlying email address is of the sender. But there's ways around that, or changing a vowel to make it look like, or do some hyphenated, so change the domain that makes it look like it's a domain. So what's kind of the latest and greatest evil tactics by those who want to get and steal our information?
Yeah, so Jack just talked about business email compromise, where you may have someone that has infiltrated someone's email in a conversation. They can sort of learn the conversation. They can use inbox rules and forwarding rules within that particular email server to stay in your email but shield incoming messages from you. If they're not in your email, they will spoof, then we call it spoofing your domain. So they will add, like for shoemaker.com, you would add an R to shoemaker so that on the surface you think, oh, this is from Jack at Shoemaker, but actually it's not. This is a threat actor trying to communicate because they can't actually get into Shoemaker's system, but they got in someone's system in the transaction. There's also what we've been talking about, which is social engineering. They will sit in your email, or they will sit in someone's email, or learn what your company is doing. They will sit on your servers for 8 months sometimes. But what's happening now is threat actors are also capitalizing on AI. They're using AI. They're using AI to do what we call brute force attacks. And that's where they use these systems and tools to basically try to crack whatever email password you have, or whatever account passwords you have. One that is, guys, I'm talking about public things. One that is public is a construction technology tool for accountants that for all the invoicing, POs that people put into a system. What the threat actors realized was that a lot of the users didn't change their default password from this provider. And so when they did the forensic analysis, all the email accounts that were affected, not emails, but all the accounts that were affected still had their default password. And so that's how they were able to infiltrate those account systems. That was a huge ordeal. That software provides services to about 50,000 companies. And when you're talking about, think about within your own company, how many contacts you have, how many accounts you have, suppliers, business partners. That's just a wealth of information. Typically, we'll have, your TIN on file. We'll have payment information, account information, if we're sending payments, if we're requesting payment. And so it can get really, it can blow up, I'll say, depending on whatever access, but they're using a lot of AI technology tools. Not all threat actors are the same as humans. And so you have typically a group of really smart folks who will create a service. It started with ransomware. So ransomware as a service, that's actually where we'd have Jack say, okay, I've created this tool that Jay, you and a few folks can use so that you can hack everyone's server. Well, then we'll pay Jack for that. Oh, Jack, that's great. Let me pay you. Well, Jack may say, well, I'll say 10 years ago, Jack probably did that. But now Jack is like, no, I'm not going to give that to you. Like, I want you to keep paying me. No, give me a commission based on the information or the money you can get from these ransomwares. So you have me and Adam, we set out in the world, and then we put all of this malicious code onto however many devices that we can put it on using social engineering, business email compromise. And let's say that I get, 5 ransomware payments to the tune of $1 million. Adam gets 10 because he's doing a much better job than I. He's got 2 million. And now we're giving Jack a cut of what we get. That's how they work.
Wow. Okay.
It's crazy.
Sign me up. Sign me up. So, okay, well, good. And kind of bringing that back to we talked about a little while ago, which is so internally we have to change our passwords like every 6 months. It can't be the same as it was before. There's certain requirements, and then it's layered. So if and it's a little more integrated than it was. So it was integrated, it kind of got pulled apart, now it's back together based on Microsoft technology. But like a lot of times, there's a full password and you have to go to yet another, use the same password, put it in again, or different passwords. So there's various layers, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. But have a policy, but implement the policy, use technology to implement that policy, and hope and software that won't allow you to use ASDFG as your password just because it's right there in front of you as I'm looking at the keyboard. So,
oh, and know who your low-hanging fruit is. All the great photos that you have online on your company's website that says about us, and you're talking about your top important people, those are the folks that are your low-hanging fruit. That's who your threat actors see online, who they try to mimic and make it seem as though they're talking for Adam Boatsman when really it's not.
yeah, and I will say, I don't post as much on Facebook anymore, partially because I feel like I should be a little more modest about things, and I really don't want to know that people know what my kids are doing and how they're doing and where they're at, kind of thing. But also because it does. It's like, okay, and I'm worried about AI being able to aggregate that information, as you said, which will say, okay, oh, looks like Jack and his family spend a lot of time doing this, and it may be for good purposes. Like, okay, well, they go to the Whitewater Center, so maybe they'd be interested in whatever it is, their own paddle. It's ridiculous, but okay.
They do
So
that.
yeah,
Companies do that.
okay,
Hoteliers, specifically in the hospitality industry, they pay to get all of that behavioral and lifestyle information. And it's for a business purpose to better serve their guests, but they pay for that information.
okay. And there's bad people that can do bad things with it too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, we're approaching the noon hour, and so Adam, if you have any closing remarks that you want to throw into here. As I told Jay, the hour would go very fast, and so yeah, and I've asked her to maybe reserve some time in the future to come back and for a guest appearance, cameo appearance down the road. But
Yeah, no, it's pretty thought provoking because I mean I really think like I buy into the whole man in the middle thing. Hey, you got to look at the thing and make sure the output is correct. And at the same time, when I think about my own business and the production of tax documents, AI reading those documents, putting them correctly into the tax return, like I do have a sense of like, Strange Brew or Laverne and Shirley or whatever. It's like, at what point am I just looking at the bottle and there was a mouse in it? And then I want to blame, the software company, but chances are I've got no recourse against them because buried in some freaking contract, they're going to say that it's all my fault. And it's like, well, damn. Yeah. So it is an interesting topic.
So I guess a shameful or shameless plug for the 250th week anniversary coming up in a few weeks. And little secret, I think we've told you this before, but we do feed you and water you while you're there, for showing up if you show up live. So no alcoholic beverages. It is noon. Although if you really want one, we know the owners, we could probably find one for you. But at 820, which is now called the Hamilton, it's a karaoke room, and it was towards the end of when we did the 200th week anniversary, but I found the button for the fog machine, and and lights that spin, and so it turned into like a disco in the background while we were doing the show. So you need to find your way
I need to
up
tune
there.
in.
Yes.
Well, that's going to be after I come, before I come, right? I'm coming the week of the 10th of March.
Yeah, it's in April. It's April. It's the first week of April.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll find something.
I'll tune in online.
All right. Cool. All right. So again, thank you everybody for joining us, and appreciate you tuning in. as Gary would say, that the recording will show up on BGW's YouTube channel. It'll show up on the Shoemaker YouTube channel, which you can access on my bio or through our website. And so we appreciate all of you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right,
Adam.
see you guys. Thanks. Appreciate it.